All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Some big news. Congressman Tim Moore making an announcement today on social media, on Instagram. That's where I saw it, where he writes, after my White House meeting, FEMA gave more than $116 million in new funding for Helene recovery, including $17.6 million for Rutherford County, a county that Congressman Moore represents. Let's bring in Congressman Tim Moore after making that announcement on social media. Congressman Moore, thank you for your time.
Hey, great to be with you today.
Same here. Let's start with this. Walk me through those meetings. How did that conversation go? And also, what does this mean for the folks there in Western North Carolina?
Well, this is really big because there's money to repair bridges and roads and other infrastructure throughout Western North Carolina. In my district, particularly in Rutherford County, they were owed over $17.5 million in debris removal expenses. Those are costs the county incurred in getting debris out of the roads, the right-of-way, river, streams, you name it. And there's still plenty of debris that needs to come up right now. So that was a big tranche of money and they've been waiting on for a few months. I actually had a meeting at the White House Monday of this week and had an opportunity to kind of lean in on that, on these, as well as some other appropriations that are out there. There's just been some slowness with the bureaucracy of getting some of these funds out, and I just made it a point, along with a number of my colleagues, to stress that this money needs to get out there ASAP. Now, of course, billions of dollars have already come down and gone out to folks, but still other funds are needed. The mitigation fund, which is money that will help pay to replace homes for folks who lost everything. A lot of that money's been distributed, but there's still money that's needed there. So we're going to continue to lean in here in Washington to make sure money gets where it needs to go to take care of these folks. I mean, this is a generational tragedy with what happened in Helene, and it's the kind of thing that I think everybody knows it doesn't get fixed overnight. But I'm certainly going to make sure that there aren't any unnecessary bureaucratic delays happening in Washington or anywhere else for that matter.
Do you plan to meet with Governor Josh Stein, North Carolina Governor Josh Stein? And if so, what does that look like, and what do you hope comes from that?
Yeah, we actually will be meeting today here in Washington, the governor and a few folks from the NC GROW, which is the state entity that is helping get these funds out of here. And I've been meeting very closely with them and working with our legislature, which is put in, I think, another $1 billion in appropriations as well. So everybody's rowing in the same direction to get these funds out. The administration, from the White House level, I can tell you that they are leaning in to make sure these funds get where they need to go. And of course, we're going to have I'm sure it's going to be a constructive meeting with the governor to see where things are with NC GROW and to see where if there's any slowness or shortcomings. I want to know that. My colleagues want to know that, and we're gonna lean and push as much as we have to.
Yeah, I was just about to ask Congressman Moore. Do you foresee any problems, any challenges as you mentioned? More funding is needed for a generational tragedy and situation there in Western North Carolina. Do you foresee any issue getting more funding?
I don't see an issue getting more funding. I think some of the challenges are, and I don't know how much you've been there and seen it yourself. You probably have. You guys have done a good job covering this, and it's one thing when you have, say, a home or a business that's destroyed and it's a matter of building it back. It's another when the land that it was sitting on no longer exists, or it's been washed away either through a landslide from a mountain or been swallowed up by the river. And so what do you do in those cases? Well, folks can't build back in many of those cases, and they need to be able to get true market value of what what that property was. Now, this is something that's not known by a lot of people, but roughly only about 4% of the people impacted by this had flood insurance. But think about it, it's in the mountains. You don't think of floods in the mountains normally. I learned something new, and that is that a landslide, like where a mountain collapses and comes down with a landslide, that's actually a peril that has to be covered under flood insurance. I never would have thought that, right? And so, so these folks who they thought they had good insurance. They played by the rules. Many of them weren't even in flood plains, and some of them lost everything. We need to take care of those folks, and I'm insisting, just like I did when I was Speaker of the State House, doing the same thing here in Congress, that we take care of these folks, that we make people whole, because these are folks that are trying to rebuild their lives. They don't have time for delay. They need to get this done, and there's a process to go through, particularly in those where the land has been taken or where it's a substantial loss, and then determining what that fair market loss is. But we need to help these folks out, and we're going to continue to push.
What are some of the conversations you've having with folks in that, because that is your community now, regarding Helene and that recovery? Because this is not just a 1 year and we're recovered. This is a continual. This is years long recovery.
Yep. So there has been a lot of progress. If folks have not been up, for example, to Chimney Rock and seen it, and Lake Lure in that area, you really ought to get up there. I mean, there are businesses, for example, in Chimney Rock, that I didn't know if they would ever be able to rebuild them. I mean, they were caked in mud. I mean, it was terrible. And so many of those businesses are now back and operating. There are bridges that had gotten just destroyed and wiped out that have now been rebuilt, roads that have. These towns have adapted to a lot of changes to try to rebuild, but to rebuild even better than where they were before. And so while there's still money that needs to come in, and it's going to come in, there's a lot of great success that's been out there. I mean, getting water systems back up and running, wastewater treatment plants. I mean, when this thing happened, I mean, think back to the utter devastation where you had like the water treatment plants for a lot of these cities gone. Why? Because where does a water treatment plant usually go? Alongside a river. Well, when these rivers became these raging torrents and 20, 30 feet deep, it destroyed these things. So a lot of these things have already come back online. And I don't want it to get lost in the details where there's still things to be done. Just the amazing work by volunteers, by churches, by communities, by the local, the local folks in the counties and the towns impacted, by the state, and yes, by the federal government, to help build up and get things going. But there's still work to be done, and we're going to continue to work on it. But I mean, billions and billions of dollars have been put in, and additional billions of dollars are going to be coming in to help the folks of Western North Carolina. And I got to say, when we get a chance to talk with the White House, with the administration, the president is very much concerned about this area, and he will lean in and make sure that the bureaucracy is not slowing this process down.
Yeah, a lot of incredible folks there, resilient folks in Western North Carolina. Again, a years-long recovery, but I know they'll make it happen. All right, speaking of the White House, I do want to ask you, as it relates to the White House, Danish and Greenland foreign ministers there met with the White House, met with the Trump administration. We heard from them in the press conference. They said the conversations were constructive. They were exploring a common way forward. This conversation of buying Greenland from President Trump. Your thoughts on that?
We know that ensuring that America has dominance of the Arctic is very, very important. There are untold trillions in natural resources located in Greenland. The strategic importance of Greenland, particularly as it relates to Russia and to China, cannot be understated. I do think, though, that the way to approach this is to look at a way to collaborate. I mean, Denmark is a NATO partner, right? I mean, this notion that there's going to be some sort of attack, I don't even, that's not going to happen. That's really ridiculous talk. But I think there may be some opportunities because Greenland is kind of a self-autonomous zone. What is it they look to do? What would they like to be able, for example, to grow their economy? And right now they're kind of hamstrung as to what they can and can't do. So allowing them to do that, but I think it's very important that it is in our national interest, in the world order, if you will, that the Arctic remain an area that is friendly and is somewhere where we have access to, particularly as China and Russia try to assert more influence. And look, I mean, when it comes to coming back to the Western Hemisphere with what happened in Venezuela. I mean, look what happened. You had in Venezuela, you had Maduro, who thankfully is now in U.S. custody, where he will stand trial. But you had a government in that country that was, welcoming and actually encouraging Iranians, Russians, Chinese to have more of a footprint in the Western Hemisphere. I appreciate the president's bold stand to say we're not going to stand for that. We're going to make sure these countries are not exerting influence right here in our backyard. And frankly, what I've been frustrated with are the decades, and this is Republican and Democrat, are the decades where somebody was essentially afraid to stand up for our country, to stand up for what was in the best interest of the United States, whether it was misuse of foreign aid dollars, what we saw over the last 4 years under President Biden, where millions and millions of people crossed into the country illegally, now resulting in a lot of these problems that we're dealing with now. I mean, we just need to follow the law. We need to enforce the law. And at the end of the day, the president needs to make sure that he's looking out for America first. And I'm proud that President Trump is doing that.
One last question before I let you go, Congressman Moore. You've been generous with your time. A lot of eyes, especially here from the Charlotte area, because we have Border Patrol here just months ago. But what's been playing out in Minnesota? Protests continue. I believe we had a student, there was a student walkout there in St. Paul in Minnesota today, following the ICE-involved shooting. A lot of people have seen that video from multiple angles of what happened. What have your takeaway from what's played out in roughly a week since that incident happened?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a tragedy. A person lost their life. I mean, that's terrible. That's awful. I've looked at the video, right? I've looked at it. I think that the appropriate investigation has to take place. To me, what it looked like was that she was taking her vehicle and she was going in the direction to run over a police officer, or a law enforcement officer. I mean, you just can't do that. That's not smart under any circumstance. And what I think is unfortunate is how this rhetoric, this rhetoric where folks are calling like these law enforcement officers Gestapo and all these ridiculous things. This just needs to stop. This is not appropriate. Folks don't need to think that they can go out here and take physical action and do things against law enforcement at all. Now, should people be able to go out and protest lawfully? Absolutely. The First Amendment is a wonderful thing, and people should be able to go out and protest and express their opinion. But when it comes to actually getting involved and taking physical action against law enforcement or anybody else for that matter, that's crossing the line. That's not appropriate. And the rhetoric needs to die down. The temperature needs to dial down. And look, for 30 years before I was ever a member of Congress, I was a lawyer. And when I would have clients who would come in and, you'd have people charged with whatever, some resist, delay, obstruct, or whatever, I would tell clients, the side of the road is not the place to argue or debate whatever you think it is. That's what courts are for. And if there's any agency that's not doing something right, guess what? That's what judges and that's what courts do. It should not be up to vigilantism or violence or people out there thinking they can just go out there and start physically assaulting or interfering with law enforcement. That never ever is going to work out well for anybody.
What would you tell the Trump administration, President Trump directly? You mentioned the rhetoric coming down. I know he's been very outspoken about what's happening. And also we've heard from Minneapolis' Mayor Jacob Frey, Governor Walz. But what would you tell President Trump regarding that rhetoric and bringing the temperature down?
Well, I think the president is justifiably angered that you have folks basically willfully encouraging people to go out and physically obstruct and interfere with and assault ICE and other law enforcement agents. So bear in mind, what gets talked about is, with Border Patrol and with ICE, you have people, this same ultra-left radical crowd that's out here doing that. I mean, they're attacking, local police officers. They're not drawing any distinction, and they're engaging in physical violence for what they think is advocating a cause, I guess. And that's just not appropriate. So, you know what? I understand the president's outrage when that happens. But at the end of the day, I think and so I think that outrage is appropriate. At the same time, I think we need to make sure that whatever can happen to dial the temperature down is great. But I saw some comments by the mayor where he was using some choice words, telling federal law enforcement to get out. And then I saw Governor Walz indicating that he was going to somehow take the National Guard and use them against. I mean, these are stupid comments, right? I mean, for one, the state can't assert jurisdiction over the National Guard, which because the president ultimately is the commander in chief, you federalize that unit, and then it's part of the active army or whatever division of the or service under the military it is. So. It just needs to calm down, and so I think that and maybe temperatures need to go down, frankly, on both sides. And as I've dealt with this, I've been very direct about stop using these incendiary and just wrong terms to describe law enforcement like Gestapo and stuff, because what that does is that gets in the mind, particularly if somebody's unhinged already, they then can take that is some sort of justification to go out and do these crazy things. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous what's happening. But it's I mean we live in an interesting time right now. I mean, look at what's happening in Iran right now. Look, I mean, all the things that are happening on the world stage at this moment. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff you guys could be covering right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of things happening around the globe. And I'm just thankful that we have, and obviously everybody in the country doesn't agree with the president. I get that. But the one thing that most folks will generally say about the president is that you'd have no doubt that he is always standing up for what he believes is in the best interest of the country. And during these challenging times on the international stage, I'm glad we have a person in the White House who is seen as strong and direct. And I think it makes a lot of other countries that would otherwise try to mess with us less likely to do so.
Well, Congressman Moore, we are covering the stories with facts and accuracy. And I just want to say thank you for stopping by Live Impact News for this discussion. Thank you for your time today.
Hey, glad to do it. Hope you have a great day.
You too.